First, we're going to hear from Janet and Lena.
Thank you, Carol. And this won't take long. Maybe just a minute of your time before we all partake of our delicious lunch that's going to be served. I'd like to just briefly introduce our Vice Chairman for the Foundation of the United Nations, Ms. Lena Lee, just to welcome us and give a few words. Lena is a very successful businesswoman and investor. Her company spanned 7 countries. And she is on board the Foundation for the Support of the United Nations because she really just wanted to make sure that she contributes to the initiatives and the programs that we're working on, not just for the SDGs with the United Nations, but now also with GlobalMindED. Lena?
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Foundation Support United Nations, I am delighted and honored to welcome to your very important gathering. Thank you for joining us. Like what Chairman Janet mentioned earlier, helping our youth to get access to education has always been his priority and the foundation. As the original and lunch and gratitude is tomorrow, let us continue to our best and making sure our youth, especially minority, get the help and need in order to have equal access to education and employment. Thank you so much. That's for Janet is the speaking. Enjoy dinner and your lunchtime. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And that's Lena, doing her best to at least speak in English. Yeah. And thank you.
And now, thank you, Lena. It's my pleasure to introduce Sam Lane. We are very fortunate to have Morgan Stanley as our major sponsor today to make this event possible. And he is here to share a little bit about himself, why this is important to Morgan Stanley, and why we have a really magical fireside chat that's ahead of us. So welcome, Sam, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Carol, and thank you, Janet, for having us here today. I'm very, very thrilled to be with you all, and I look around this room, and it's just an amazing room. The energy, as has been mentioned before, is stupendous. So thank you again for having me. On behalf of Morgan Stanley, we're thrilled to be a partner here and to be here for this event and to really share in the learnings that we all have to offer. But a bit about my personal story. First generation American, first generation college student in my family to go to a 4-year college. Also love the fact that my 3 older siblings went to community colleges, love what they do for our communities. And a resounding theme through this discussion here today is access and opportunity. And without that access and opportunity that I received earlier in my career, I would not be able to say that I'm a first generation Wall Street executive as well. So that's a tremendous opportunity and privilege that I have. As I mentioned before, on behalf of Morgan Stanley, where I have the privilege of leading the diversity inclusion efforts for the firm, all of this and our support here today wouldn't be possible without many of our colleagues across Morgan Stanley that are not only doing the work behind the scenes, but are also here with us today. So I wanted to recognize our Morgan Stanley colleagues in the audience. If you could please stand. Thank you for your contribution and your efforts. So I'm on the stage because our dear friend Joan Hornig could not be. Joan was going to do this introduction, but unfortunately she fell ill today and was not able to be with us, but she did want to share her greetings and her enthusiasm with this crowd and to thank you all for being here. And she also wanted us to make a brief mention of her mentee and representatives from NCA&T that are here in the audience. I know we have Aggies in the audience. So, as Carol mentioned, the mission for Morgan Stanley is really aligned to the mission of GlobalMindED, and we do so in a number of different ways. We have our Institute for Inclusion, which we announced back in early 2020 to help us think about our efforts of inclusion, not just internally at Morgan Stanley, but also in our communities in two different ways. From a philanthropic standpoint, in giving back, which is one of our core values, as well as from understanding the commercial opportunities in the marketplace and thinking about our products and services with our communities in mind. I want to highlight a couple of programs and initiatives that have come out of that institute that I think will be relevant and that will resonate with this audience. One of those initiatives is our Equity in Education and Career Consortium. It's a mouthful, I know. So we call it EECC. The EECC is a multi-million-dollar investment in nonprofit organizations all across the country that are supporting young people in reaching their educational goals and aspirations. We partner with organizations such as College Possible and CUNY ASAP. We work with organizations such as SCO, Braven, America Needs You, to name a few more. And it's all about how do we continue to support these organizations that are doing great work across our communities to take care of and support our young adults across the country. I also want to mention, since I mentioned NCA&T earlier, we have a tremendous support and investment in our HBCU community, not just our HBCU community, where we have our HBCU Scholars Program, where we are in year 3 of a 4-year commitment to provide full academic scholarships to 15 scholars per year. We're at 45 of our committed to 60 scholars that will have 4 years paid for through that program. That program is similar to programs that we have for our HSIs and our tribal colleges as well. So now, with that as the foundation for a bit about Morgan Stanley's participation here today, and we thank you again for having us, I'd like to introduce you to our next panel. It's a stirring conversation between Carla Harris and James Rhee. And for those that don't know Carla and James, I would just say this: where have you been? It feels redundant and unnecessary to share their bios, but I wanted to highlight just some of the exceptional accomplishments that both Carla and James have had. Carla is a vice chairman and managing director, senior client advisor at Morgan Stanley. And just to name a few key bullet points that you should all know about, she has been on Fortune magazine's list of the top 50 most powerful black executives in corporate America. That's not all. U.S. Banker's top 25 most powerful women in finance and Black Enterprise's top 75 most powerful women in business. She serves on several boards, including MetLife, the Food Bank of New York City, the Executive Leadership Council, A Better Chance, Mount Sinai and St. Vincent's Hospitals, and Xavier University, and others. Carla is also author of numerous books, but I'll include the two in particular: Strategize to Win, Expect to Win, actually 3, and Lead to Win. She's a renowned singer and songwriter, and this hopefully will come up in her conversation in a little bit. She's performed at the Grand Ole Opry, Carnegie Hall, and the Apollo Theater. And James Rhee is a founder and owner of Red Helicopter and the Johnson Chair of Entrepreneurship of Howard University. He's an acclaimed impact investor, a CEO, a goodwill strategic champion of change, especially at Ashley Stewart, where as CEO, he turned a failing business with deep roots in the Black community into a billion-dollar success. He is... That's not all. James is a TED speaker, a New York Urban League Frederick Douglass Award recipient, MIT Sloan School of Management senior lecturer and charter member of Ashaka's Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur program, and founding member of both JP Morgan Chase Advancing Black Pathways and of CEO Action for Racial Equity. As soon as to be published, author of Red Helicopter, A Parable of Our Times, in partnership with HarperCollins. We look forward to hearing more about that. And you can hear his TED Talk with the same title. And hopefully he'll mention his own connection to music as well in a conversation with Carla. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome to the stage Carla Harris and James Rhee to their fireside chat.
And while they're taking their seats, I'm just going to do another little shameless plug that these two are Inclusive Leader Award winners, as is Janet Salazar. And just for those of you who are not familiar, those are like the Academy Awards for DEI. So.
We ready? Okay. We've purposely not really caught up because we wanted to save it for this. So it's literally Carla and James. Part of this is catching up because we've been watching each other.
Yep.
So,
Well, can I start first by saying, Sam, thank you for that amazing introduction. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
Carol, congratulations. It's often hard, I know, and team, it's often hard to be out front. It's really nice that people are here to support you, your team, and all of your sort of collaborators. It's not easy to be out front. So thank you. Yeah. All right, so what Sam was saying, like, we've joked in the past, we've almost lived parallel lives.
Yes.
But before we get there, like, the first space we shared a few years apart, right, was at Harvard College. Mm-hmm. But before then, so that everyone knows, because we've caught up about this, like, let's talk about how we grew up, because it's very relevant for why we're
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons that we're so excited to have this conversation around moving money meaningfully, impactfully, and effectively, because, you know, neither one of us came from money. And we all know that if you don't understand money, if you're not educated around money, then it can be very difficult to leverage it and create real wealth over time. And that's part of what needs to happen to close some of the, you know, inequity that exists in the country, whether it's around healthcare, whether it's around education. And I grew up in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm originally from Texas, so I'm a bona fide Southerner, although I've now spent almost 40 years in New York City. Certainly did not have the relationship with money that I came to have over time. I'm a product of Catholic schools. My father was a captain of a commercial fishing vessel, and my mother was an educator. And frankly, I've been negatively motivated all my life. When you tell me that I can't do something, I'm all over it. But I did have one person in my life who did know about money, who had an education about money, and that was my grandmother. She was the first and one of the most successful entrepreneurs that I've ever met. And she realized early that I had good analytical and quantitative skills. So by the time I was in 8th grade, I was her bona fide bookkeeper. And one of the things that I learned very early on is my grandmother didn't spend it if she didn't see it coming back. Right? And so even though I didn't have other education around money, that stuck. And she was also someone who diversified early. While she had her business, she always bought houses in the neighborhood and rented those houses out as well. And she was a neighborhood banker. I told James this story. My grandmother, because she had a successful business, people would often come and say, "Ms. Emma, can I borrow $20 till payday? Ms. Emma, can I borrow so-and-so?" And she said, "Sure, baby. Now remember, on payday, you owe me 40, right?" And by the time I'm like, "Grandmama, that's 100% interest." She's like, "Yeah, baby, how bad do you want it?" Right? So I learned a little bit about markets before I actually went to Harvard. And my introduction to Wall Street was after my sophomore year through the SEO program, which Sam mentioned. And that was when I learned about finance. That's when I learned about investment banking. And that was the summer that changed the trajectory of my life.
And sometimes it bears saying, because we understate some things, but I just want you to look at our faces and the commonality about some of the things I'm about to say. Sometimes it really needs to be said. I have to say it. Yeah, my parents were immigrants. I'm from a long line of caregivers. My dad was a pediatrician. My mother was a nurse. They survived the Korean War. They knew true suffering. Mom lost her dad. They fled to Busan. After the war, no one thought Korea would be what it is today. Korea was not cool in 1966, 1967. It was impoverished. And so my parents came here with nothing, and they had a medical degree and a nursing degree. I grew up on Long Island, product public schools. I don't think my parents owned a stock or a bond until they were, much to my nudging, because I spent a long time, still am in finance. They didn't have the capital or the knowledge to do it. We lived a life of social currency. We were raised that way, right? You took care of people, fundamentally. I would be sent to my room punished, like if there was even a glimmer of me taking advantage of someone, gloating, winning not correctly. It was that sort of house. My dad would come home late. He would give medical care to families that didn't have money. And he just said, this is what you do. My mother, she was a nurse, became a housewife, and then a mother full-time. She went back to get her medical degree renewed because she wanted to take care of Korean War veterans that were dying of that age. That's how I was raised. So a real longitudinal view of life, a real commitment to other people. Yeah, and so and then I went to Harvard. Harvard was the first time I would say I was exposed to generational wealth. I didn't even understand what that really meant.
Yep.
And I didn't really know what private schools were, actually. Went to public schools throughout. So we shared that space, different time, not that far apart, but different time, but same space. And I think both of us probably sort of had the same, oh, interesting.
I was the same way. I didn't know anything about the private schools. As I said, I'm a product of Catholic schools, so the private schools like Exeter and Andover and those schools I had never heard of. But I will say that, again, my cultural upbringing certainly made me feel ready, and that negative motivation, because people were saying, oh, you're going to go to a place like Harvard. It's not the same as Jacksonville, Florida. So the fact that they were trying to prepare me that it might be some trouble, I was like, oh, no. I am not going to be just a bursar's number at the end, which is your ID. And so that made me even more, determined to do well when I went there. And that's all I knew, because my parents were very focused on making sure that I did the best that I could do no matter where I was. And when I got to Harvard, like you said, it was a big awakening. You know, I will never forget this. This was 1980 when I went. It was 1980, and if you all are about my vintage, and I see a few people in here, remember, back in the late 70s and early 80s, what was popular from a fashion perspective was preppy. Remember that? Everything was, dark green and burgundy and plaid and the docksiders. Are you with me? Well, because I was going to Harvard, I had to, of course, go make sure I had the right wardrobe. And I was working at McDonald's. That was my first W-2 job. Thank you, McDonald's. And I will tell you, I spent all my money that summer buying all those preppy clothes. And I was the only thing walking around Harvard in preppy clothes, right? Everybody had jeans and rips and this and that. So again, I didn't know about generational wealth. I didn't know about any of that, but neither was I intimidated once I learned. And that is something, James, that I think is very different than the youth deal with today. One fundamental difference about your time and my time, because there were so few of us in those spaces, breathing that rarefied air, you knew that you were going to be the first and the only in many, many rooms. And that's just the way it was, so it didn't bother you. Today, I would argue that millennials and Zers, they need to see it in order to believe that they're going to have a shot, which is why it's important that each of us as leaders in this room put ourselves in the positions where we can be seen by them because they don't have the expectation, and I would argue in many cases, neither the fortitude to be the first and the only. I can't tell you how many times, and I know it happens to you at Howard, how many times kids come to you and say, I'm the only one that's gonna be in the room. Or, oh man, there's nobody else that looks like me. And of course, when they approach me, I'm thinking, so, right? But that's not their experience. And we have to be cognizant of giving them that extra boost of confidence, that extra boost that it's okay. And what I say to them when they say to me, how do you manage being the only woman or the only person of color in the room? I said, listen, let me tell you something. If you're the only person that looks like you in the room, you're the only person that looks like you in the room, right? Yeah. You don't have to vie for attention. Everybody's looking. Take advantage of that, which is exactly what you did, because there were not a lot of people that looked like you that were in private equity. I can count them on my hand today.
So I showed up at Harvard in 1989, okay? It still was preppy. I still went and got American Eagle and LL Bean flannel shirts with a braided belt, right? And the Bass brown shoes.
But
you know what I'm talking about?
But you were in the minority, honey,
right?
because I'm telling you.
I had to go. Same. We should have met before then, because you could have warned me. So I showed up with that stuff, and then for me, like, I think that the feeling, I've always been the only. Think about it. Like, I'm chairing entrepreneurship at Howard University. I'm always the only. And it's not by choice. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's kind of had to happen. And so, my experience there at Harvard was great. I made a lot of friends. And, but then my path, because you have this in your heart too, I never forgot. I have this instinct, again, caregiver blood. I always like to do something, and then I deconstruct it. And I'm like, oh, it's so simple. So I went and taught high school after Harvard. I made $12,600, and I picked a school where the kids were maybe not going to school, and I was saying to them, listen, you can do it. It's this. And then I went to Harvard Law School, not yet in finance, not private equity. I went to Harvard Law School to be a public defender. That was my intent, and I think in many ways, I think I am in a different face right now. I went to be a public defender. And this is a story about education, about race, about women. My mother has always been my hero in my life, about quiet leadership, about winners finishing second, actually. I was so encumbered with debt after Harvard Law School. Like, I was drowning. And I hated having the debt. So that's why I was the first hire ever, Merrill Lynch M&A group out of Harvard Law School. When I joined this very elite private equity firm, I was the first person to not have an MBA. I was their first high school teacher. Look at my face, this is picture very mahogany walls in Boston, 35th floor, 111 Huntington and the Prudential Center. It's Boston, remember, it's Boston. But I never, one of the things, I don't know if you went through, I've gotten much more now aware, right? And some of this, being the only, sometimes a lot of times it was a burden too, right? Because I always wanted, why am I the only one here? Mm-hmm. And there were parts of my life sometimes when it was actually a point of pride, that, oh, I made it. It quickly became, well before we met, it was not a point of pride. It became a point of, this isn't good. And because if you think about Asian immigrants, it's changing now. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, Asian immigrants desperately wanted to assimilate. To the point where my parents didn't force me to learn how to speak Korean. It's very different now, and I'm very proud of my children. But that's sort of like when right before some of my sort of history deeper, that's where I was. I was in debt, in private equity, doing it, and starting to have the realization that I really understand the capital markets now. It's not helping certain large segments of people. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that enough to really know that until I was in it, until I was in Mordor, basically.
Yep. And let's talk a little bit about leveraging who you are and what you know to make change. So I get to Morgan Stanley, and every firm likes to recruit. And that's, that's sort of our mainstay. That's how we get new talent in. And recruiting was really important for me because I knew that if I could get more people in the door that looked like me, there would be a multiplier effect. Because for many people, as an analyst making $150,000 a year, that's a big deal. Nobody else in your family has ever done something like that. And by the way, most folks of color are not only taking care of themselves, they're taking care of 2 or 3 families. Your own family that you came from, maybe your grandmother's family, maybe your brother or sister, so it could be meaningful. So one of the things that I jumped into right away was recruiting, and ended up being one of the best and top recruiters at the firm. But there was more to it for me around recruiting. It was around making the difference and making sure that I would not only be the only. And so, again, going back to moving money meaningfully, one of the things that's important to me is that you can't grow your wealth, you can't get your wealth unless you know how to make your wealth. So for me, having more people in this business of financial services would be a great foundation at the end of the day. And then both James and I'm going to jump into it because I know we only had a half an hour and we want to make sure we leave time for you guys to ask questions, is being able, again, to leverage the platform that you're sitting on. My chairman asked me in 2014 to start the multicultural client strategy. And I said, thank you very much for your confidence, but what's that? And he said, I can't tell you what it is, but I'll tell you what it's not. It's not philanthropy. We do that through the Morgan Stanley Foundation. It's not traditional DE&I, because hopefully we're doing that through our Office of DE&I and HR. He said, but it's commercial. I want to be seen as the firm that engages most productively with people of color. No firm owns that. I want to own it. So blank sheet of paper. Blank sheet of paper, what do you create? Well, I created something, again, that would have the multiplier effect by starting the Multicultural Innovation Lab, where we brought in early stage companies that were founded by women and people of color, tech-enabled companies, and we gave them 3 things. Thank you. We gave them 3 things: cash in exchange for a single-digit percentage of the company, because, again, we wanted to make the statement to the marketplace that this wasn't philanthropy. This was an investment. We are an investment house. That's what we do. Second, we gave them a carefully curated curriculum that would take them from being a founder to a CEO, because as you know, there's a difference, and we connect them to some of our larger investment banking clients. And as James and I were preparing for this, we were talking about the fact that if we could make these entrepreneurs successful, then again, look at the multiplier effect. You not only make them wealthy, but hopefully enough their company is successful enough that they can make other people that work in those companies successful. They could also create greater and greater jobs, and therein lies the multiplier effect. The other thing is, if we got it right, every other firm on the street would copy. And so they did. Almost every firm on the street has its own version of that kind of thing. So again, when you think about moving money meaningfully, the message that we wanted to leave you with was to think as big as you possibly can and to be innovative around what you do, especially now where we have a white sheet of paper moment. None of us have ever lived on the other side of a pandemic. None of us have ever seen the kind of social unrest that we've seen on the back of racial inequities in this country for the last 70 years. So nobody has the playbook. Nobody has the playbook as to how it should happen. So now is the time to sort of think creatively and innovatively, and you'll be able to push the edge of the envelope in a way that you never have. And so now I'm going to turn it over to James, because I thought when we first met and he told me what he did, I was awestruck, dumbfounded, without words, and I'm generally not without words, right? And because of what he chose to invest in and how he did it, and again, trying to create the multiplier effect and moving money differently in the community. James?
So, 42 years old, 10 years ago, 2013, I'm in tall buildings in Boston, the resume, the life. You have to have the know-how to move the capital markets. That is very important, like that I was an experienced investor, right? Yeah, so this is a metaphor. It's a parable almost, but the good news, it actually happened. So dad's dying. All the sort of mutualism and caregiving that is frankly going away in the society. Look at insurance companies right now. They don't want to underwrite mutual risk. They're moving into wealth management. So it's real social compact dissolution. So 2013, my dad's dying. Mom's not doing very well. I'm sitting there on a board call starting my impact. I've been doing impact investing since '09, but there was a former employer had a portfolio company called Ashley Stewart. And the way in which they were discussing and talking about the company, I didn't like it. And Ashley Stewart, for those of you who don't know, it is on the surface of it, a fashion business for a certain segment of black women who are plus size, and it's like moderate income business, mostly all in black neighborhoods. And to me, I just sort of was listening to this, thinking about my mother, because I know I've been the son of a woman who gets underappreciated, unrecognized, and blames herself. I've lived with it my entire life. And I'm like, I don't think we should be talking like that. Oh, they're like, and these things happen, everyone. Like, I just really sorry to be the bearer of bad news. It happens. And so what are you going to do about it? And so I wasn't a complete crazy, but a little bit. I said, I'm going to resign from the board. I walked away from my life in Boston. It was option value. I said, 6 months, I'm going to do this. 6 months, I'm experienced distressed investor. Everyone in Wall Street knows me. They won't screw this company over too badly if I'm here. So 6 months, I'm living it. I spent most of my time with women in black neighborhoods across the country. I'm hanging jewelry, learning what peplum is, learning what a Marilyn is. I have no clue, right? But the first thing I said to everyone in the company, I just said, I know I may be the least qualified person to run this company. I know I'm not what you need, but like I'm here, and I'm the only one who showed up. And so for 6 months, that's how my life was. And a lot of what Carla is saying, like I was thinking about, where did like the creative, courageous, imaginative James go? Like, where'd he go? Like I used to like, we're gonna get to music. Like I was just like, I used to create things. And I was like, money, it made me less creative. Like, I just was like, I'm doing boxes. And so I came up with a plan. I just said, I think the country's going to be lonely and there's going to be a lot of crisis and that people will really reward trust and real soul and real connectedness. And if we could create a business plan that also allowed these women to be themselves instead of sort of putting on another voice, let her sing. And then on the back end, I'll wire it up to all my friends here. Legally, I'll do all the paperwork. Let's let this woman be. And let's see if this company has a chance. The company had no Wi-Fi at the time, was this twice bankrupt. And so guess how many people, when I went around the world begging for money, how many people do you think backed this idea? Not one. I was rejected by the entire financial community, laughed at, actually, because the sad part is that they didn't think that a Korean-American private equity man, everyone judges so quickly, had anything in common and couldn't possibly be connected to black women. That's a very sad statement, and that's not the future I see or I want for this country. I mean, this is a metaphor of what's happening right now. So I called my friends. I raised $18 million in like 3 days, and I showed up at the bankruptcy court and said, you're not liquidating this company, and I'm staying here to run it. 6 months ended up being 7 years, and I'm not recommending this path to everyone, okay? But I think the point is that it required, there's theory and policy that's important. Change of mindset is really important too, but not being on the ground too and really backing and yourself doing it, the work that's happening you have to give the people leading on the ground agency. They know more than money does. And there's so much of a temptation to equate money with wisdom. Money is a tool. The people on the ground, they know. You have to give agency. The biggest thing, and I'll fast forward, it was very successful in many ways, the most important ways that I'm proud of. And people are only now beginning to, you knew right away, and Carla went out of her way. Twice I was on her podcast. Every time I was tired, and it was nice to have an advocate, Carla did it for me so that I could advocate for the women that I was serving. Like, it's just not, and I will always appreciate. First person I called to on the Howard speaker series that I did was, it had to be her. And then she showed up. So it's about showing up. So I think the biggest thing that we did was that we allowed the women to have agency. And we gave the tools necessary at times, right? A little accounting lesson here, a little bit of money lesson here. But her instincts, she just didn't have the opportunity to know. And so once we gave it to her, she sang, and we crushed it.
All right, let's get ready to close this out. So what's ahead for James Rhee?
Oh, what's next?
What's ahead for James Rhee?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. My mother died last year of Ashley Stewart, and so that was very unexpected. So I lost both parents. You know who helped bury both my parents? It was black women across this country came and buried both my parents with me.
Yeah.
So they showed up. Some of my other friends, they were too busy to show up, and they showed up. Mm-hmm. I took some time off, and I'm a bit of a reluctant, I'm just like, once you give me the mic, I'll speak. But it's sort of like, this book is coming out with HarperCollins. It's called Red Helicopter. And I just going to give you the 15-second thing. What happened at Ashley Stewart, the generosity I received from the women I was working with, they had a lot of reasons to say, what? And they didn't. And then it reminded me of a story when I was little about me coming home with a toy red helicopter. And I got it because I had been giving half my lunch to this boy who, his mother had passed away this summer before. I didn't know. And my parents explained to me why I got it. And my parents were very emotional. We had very little money. And they just said, don't forget this. Like, when you have, don't forget an abundance mindset. Like, think big. So the book is called Red Helicopter. It's going to be turned into a movie. It's coming out on April 9th. It's with HarperCollins. I am working on a rock opera. I've been composing music while writing the book. So picture like Hamilton with different faces and protagonists. So I teach at MIT and Howard and at Duke. I've been making sure I can teach what I know. If you can't teach it, it's not scalable. And I'm funding entrepreneurs and students who do this way, learn this way, who know what creating positive externalities means. We have a lot of people who create a lot of negative externalities. You're a super positive externality creator. We should be rewarding positive externality people and organizations, and we don't. Mm-hmm. And so just picture Red Helicopters like Mr. Rogers meets Trevor Noah that knows how to manage money. That's what it is.
All right.
What are you doing? What are you up to?
Well, the nearest term thing is November 20th. I will be having my 6th concert at Carnegie Hall. Yep. To benefit St. Charles Borromeo School up in Harlem and Bishop Kenny High School down in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm spending a lot of time going around the country talking about my latest book, Lead to Win. I'm continuing to advise the lab at Morgan Stanley and be a co-portfolio manager of the Next Level Fund, and having a good time being a mommy of an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old. No jokes, please. All righty, I think we have like 5-7 minutes for Q&A. Any questions? Oh.
Pretty much at time, because we've got some Juilliard
Oh.
students that are going to play music.
Oh no, we wouldn't stand in the way of that. Juilliard students playing music. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
All right. Are we having fun yet or what? Okay, thank you again, Carla Harris and James Rhee. That was phenomenal. I would now like to call on our Juilliard students, Joshua and Bianca, kudos to join us on stage. Remember when I said earlier the reason why we're here is for our young and younger, communities, right? And you know, supporting them with everything that we have. So here are two. I'd like to call them on stage now. Two of them. I'm just gonna let you introduce yourselves before you play for us.
Hi everyone, I'm Bianca.
Hi, I'm Joshua.
I'm a student at the Bronx High School of Science. I'm also a Global Youth Ambassador for FSUN, and I'm a musician at the Juilliard Preparatory Division.
I'm a sophomore at the Hunter College High School. I'm also at the Juilliard Preparatory Division, and I play saxophone. She plays clarinet. And I'm also a Global Youth Ambassador at the Foundation of Support of the United Nations.
Thank you. So we're just going to play a quick tune for you. All of you probably know it. It's La Vie en Rose. So we're going to bring our instrument on. Awesome.
Yep.
Will you play here or there? We're going to bring it up. Okay.
Okay, so while they helping, okay, there you go. I actually wanted to call on Weston. Dean Weston Spratt, who is responsible for, you know, shaping and just really making sure that our students at Juilliard really get the access they need to be able to participate in all the programming that Juilliard offers for our young genius artists. So I just want you to probably share with us for a couple of minutes what you are doing in collaboration with our young artists here and what the program is all about and how that ties into the access and opportunity that we're all been talking about this morning. Thanks, Preston.
Thank you, Janet. And thanks to everybody for having me. This is actually my first time ever at the United Nations, and it's definitely great to follow James and Carla. You all just, these very amazing stories that you share, and just so much resonated with me, especially hearing Carla speak about growing up in Texas, which I did, and being a musician, which I am, and being negatively motivated, which I very much was. One of my first ever opportunity to go to a professional concert, I saw the Houston Symphony perform. I was there with my dad, and he said, "There's no black people on that stage." And I said, okay, well, we'll see what we can do about that. And this is my 19th year in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. But here, today, we're here to talk about the amazing work that's happening with Josh and Bianca. And I have the privilege of being the Dean and Director of the Preparatory Division at the Juilliard School. And there we lead two really incredible youth programs every Saturday for students between the ages of 8 and 18. So about 400 students come to us every Saturday, and they basically take a full conservatory curriculum over the course of the day. So these students here, they're showing up every Saturday, including this Saturday, at 8:30 in the morning, and they're doing community building exercises. They're learning what it means to be a citizen artist. They're taking music theory, ear training, private lessons, chamber music, playing in orchestra and wind ensemble, and singing in chorus. And the Music Advancement Program, which is the program that they're in, is specifically geared towards serving students who are historically underrepresented, underserved, and under-resourced in classical music. And thinking about equitable access, we understand that a world-class organization and a world-class education also means that it has to be truly accessible. And we've done a lot of fundraising around that, and as of a couple of years ago, we were able to raise a transformational gift to make sure the Music Advancement Program will be completely free forever, which is, it's just been an amazing thing. So I want to we're ready to invite them to come up and play and share a few things? Okay, and then we're gonna have the conversation. Okay, sounds good. Go ahead.